I mean, this is part of the conversation in terms of look, there university campuses in the United States have served as a place and space for freedom of speech for decades. Okay. And it's central. It's a central piece in terms of how change takes place in society. Now, with regards to kind of cracking down on Palestinian or pro-Palestinian activists, it's very frightening because the university has always been seen as a space that is safe for everyone to use their ideas and kind of engage in debates and conversations. But when that conversation is shut down and seen as any advocacy for Palestinian equal rights, is more or less a call for killing all Jews. I don't know the leap how that happens. Then we have a problem. Okay, and there are layers to this problem. The first is what is anti-Semitism or anti-Jewish feelings, okay, in relation to Zionism, one thing, right? Can you be an anti-Zionist and not be seen as anti-Semitic? Can you be against Israeli policy and not be seen as anti-Semitic? So this is a conversation not only in relation to Mahmoud Khalil and other folks who have been visas revoked and all. It's not only about them. This is a conversation around whether people are able to debate and have differing viewpoints that are based on fact, based on reasonable and rational argumentation, right? Are those people able to have those conversations or are they not? So this is a conversation around freedom of speech, end of story. And Americans, for the longest time, we have always been saying that freedom of speech is so central to who we are, and it's one of those basic liberties, basic rights that Americans hold very dear to their hearts, right? And if that is taken away, then we have a problem. But in addition to this, I also want to say, if you want to preserve freedom of speech today in the United States, you must address the question of Palestine. You must address how Palestine is talked about on campuses, is talked about in newspapers, is talked about in the news, it's talked about on television, it's talked about in popular media, right? And then in addition to this, I also want to say that um, these are tactics to scare people, you know, and they're frightening. I mean, they have real life consequences for people
Yep.
who would lose their livelihood, lose their education, and all that sort of stuff. You lose their jobs and their homes. So there's very serious. I mean, I'm not necessarily downplaying the situation here. All I'm trying to say is that there have been a lot of challenges to those actions. And then ultimately, again, this is one of those interesting things is that the Trump administration and the kind of right politics, right-wing politics, on the one hand, will be met and have been. I mean, there's a galvanization that is taking place on the other side. And the problem is that in the context of the US, there's that polarity, right? Um, the kind of by binary way of thinking of things, right? Democrat versus a Republican, and they fight. And the sad reality is that the Democrats have done nothing to address the situation of Palestine or the genocide. But ultimately, I see that there's a change happening that is moving against some of those policies. There's legal challenges that are somewhat still there, right? So to me, does that give me hope? I mean, I'm both pessimistic, but I'm also optimistic. Okay. And that's a very hard and weird place to be honest. I never imagined that I would have two conflicting ideas and two conflicting feelings at the same time. Because, and in the sense that nothing will change if it doesn't get to the boiling point. And that's a sad reality. Okay. And then, I mean, it's interesting, there's this saying that if first they ignore you, second they kind of discredit you, want to discredit you, and then they fight you, and then you win. Okay. The idea is that, I mean, there's something interesting about the fact that any pro-Palestinian action on campuses and kind of galvanizing what we're noticing, the change that is happening in the United States, culminated into the campus protest against the genocide around the United States, right? Um, and that did not come out of nowhere. But then the reaction, it solicited a very strong reaction. It is because it is very powerful. It is, I mean, the idea is that, like, when you say, when you do something and it solicits a big reaction, it means that you're doing something that is of weight, that is actually powerful, you know. Um, and I mean, there's a reason why, for example, there is an organization called Democrats for Israel. It means that there's a necessity to have an organization like that, because there's someone felt that there's a need that we need to say, oh, Democrats should be on the side of Israel. Okay, it didn't just come out of nowhere, right? It means that there are forces that are pushing against policies of Israel within the Democratic Party that necessitated the creation of an organization that would push against it effectively. So, look, younger people are the ones who are going to change the world, and we all know that. And this isn't a story that we haven't heard before. Younger people have changed the world many, many times, and it continues to happen. And this is no exception. Vietnam War, civil rights movement, and Black Lives Matter, and I can go on, right? But ultimately, the question of Palestine is so central to American society, American values, that we cannot preserve, as Americans, preserve our values without thinking about and centering justice for Palestinians.